Kay, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color?
Yeah.
Black.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Never would have guessed. I'd have thought like blue
Oh.
or purple.
Yeah.
Black.
No, I'm pretty straightforward. It's like, yeah, black pops. I don't know. It's just something that I've been. Yeah, I like a lot of black stuff, I guess.
Well, for anybody who's listening, welcome to Smackcast episode 29. This is this is your main man Fode and Sensei K Sakawe. This is
What's up?
did I say that right, K?
Yeah, what? Sakau. Yeah, all the vowels are short.
Sakawe. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I'm,
good.
I'm I'm trying hard because it's not a hard name, but it's not either an easy name. So,
Yeah.
um, anybody who's ever listened to the show, Kay is a long-standing friend of the podcast, just an absolutely
Appreciate it.
incredible individual. And just to get personal, from maybe 2.5 Mississippis, Kay's a big inspiration to me, and
Aw.
just been a good friend. I've never actually physically met you, which is
Yeah, that's
crazy
true, huh?
crazy to say. I feel like I've met you a
Yeah.
dozen times. I feel like we grew up together, but
Yeah, feelings mutual.
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you're a lot older than me. Maybe not a lot.
Yep.
That's unfair. Uh,
About a decade, so yeah.
you're a decade or so, yeah, older than me. We have the same ones digit, and uh, but we grew up. We talked about this the other night. We grew up largely on the same parallel, um, in a karate steeped upbringing. You know, your dad was a karate teacher. My dad was a karate teacher. Very, it seems like congruent mindsets on what your dad had for your life as opposed to what my dad had for my life. And also the way that we grew up with our father. You know, not to make this a totally patriarchal podcast, but I feel like the way that you grew up with your father was largely congruent to the way that I grew up with my father, to use that word second time in this podcast. Just, you know, a martial arts bond that almost was forged in fire, and we've never even met. So, Kay, welcome again to Smafcast. What's been going on with you? And give us a little quick quip about you, man.
Nah, man, just living life, just trying to spend time with family. I don't know if you guys know, I got two boys. I got one that's just turning 12, and then the other one's turning 7. So, I had to take a little bit of a rest. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I got 3 myself. One is about to turn 8, so she's right there with yours. And you said the other was 12, so I
yep.
teach a lot of kids. I teach a lot of kids at the gym, and most of them are in that 9 to maybe 12-year-old range. So yeah, I'm right with you, man. I feel you.
Yeah, you blink, and they just, they sprout like friggin' bamboo.
Oh,
Man.
it's
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 crazy.
incredible. And
Yeah.
their brains are on overdrive.
Not to mention, you start noticing their individual personalities, which is really,
Oh my
that's a
gosh.
gem. That's a gem right there.
And they're so beautiful. Like kids of that age, man, you can't bring them down. And when you do, like what a prick you happen to be. If you bring a kid of that age down, like you can't get in their way, man. Just let them
Yeah.
fly. Those kids, they're
Yeah.
so beautiful at that age.
You say something really good there because you don't want to do anything to what's it's called, like kind of hold back their personalities,
Yeah, yeah.
their spirit, right? Like, especially, you kind of you want them to grow, and you want them to really kind of like, come into their own. And if you do anything,
Yes.
I feel if you do anything to like, jump on their spirit, like they may not, kind of sprout the way they're supposed to, so,
And it's
uh,
tough. I'm sure you've observed
yeah.
this yourself, but like sometimes you say things or you do things and you're like, "Oh man, that was really like that's going to squash them. I shouldn't do that." Or I should find an alternative to this. Like I've encountered it many times. I got 3 kids. I just said that.
Yeah.
You've got two or three?
Two.
Two. So I mean,
Yeah.
but you've had a million kids over the years teaching martial arts. So,
Teaching,
kid,
yeah, and now teaching in the classroom too. So
this is kind of what I want to talk about tonight was, you know, just the experience as a teacher. I mean, you've been a teacher for a long time in the martial arts, but also in education now the last few years.
yeah, last few
Plus
years.
your own kids. I mean, that's a whole different layer. I thought you can sympathize with this. I thought like 5, 10 years teaching other people's kids that I would understand how to be a father. It's nowhere near the same thing.
I just had this conversation with my dad the other day, and no, you're absolutely right. It's like, and he asked me a good question. He's like, "Hey, kid, when you had your kids, did you know what to do? I mean, besides asking my
Hell
parents,
no,
right?
but I pretended.
No, yeah, it's like so we all kind of muddle through that, right? But there's one thing
Oh.
we all know how to be good people, right? I mean,
That that
and that
is that is true.
I think that's the basis, right? It's like as long as there, and then from there we let our core values take over. And so it's amazing. It's like nobody teaches you how to be a parent, right? You can take classes, but until you're in the thick of it, right? It's like, what the heck am I doing? Like
Well,
we
and
all make the
and
same mistakes.
people try to teach you how to be a parent. I don't know that it's wholly productive.
No, you're right because certain people have a certain way of doing things, and that may,
And
and again, that goes
every
back to your
kid, I
core
mean, this is
values,
so
right?
trite, but every kid is different.
Yeah, yeah. Every kid is different. You know,
100%.
uh, oh man, it's I got my oldest right now who is he's soft. He reminds me of me when I was growing up, right? But then my second one, my youngest, yeah, like I think we were just mentioning, it's like, hey, we don't know. There's times where we don't know if we need to scold our kids or if we need to we need to praise them.
Yeah.
He's one of those where it's like, man, my youngest is like, like he just jumps in heads first, no worries. But my oldest is like, oh, let me dip a toe in
That's
and
my one
figure it
and two
out.
too, dude. Like number one, she's got to have everything perfectly in line. Number two, forget it. I don't care. If I'm wearing half a piece of armor, I'm good to go. Like that's number two,
Yeah,
man. And
yeah,
sometimes like I see myself in number two personally, where I was a bit of a daredevil. I wasn't a super daredevil, but like if my parents told me not to do something, I was finding every reason why they were wrong and I could do it. And that's my number two.
yeah.
My number two is 4.5. That girl will do anything as long as she has a parachute. Like she's
There
good to
you
go.
go.
Number one, forget it. She's got to have 10 different safety precautions in line, plus 10 different uh, versions of how she's going to accomplish said feat. Um, it's crazy, and I'm not that way at all. I'm definitely more in line with number two, where I'm like, well, let's strap up our big boy pants and see what happens. um,
Yeah, no, but
that's
from that perspective, right? It's like being a parent and then looking at it, from coming from the martial art instructor perspective, it's like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into?
yeah,
But
exactly. That
yeah,
and that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight. I mean, like, there's a good balance of both when you're teaching martial arts, right? Like,
yeah,
you have to sort of pat people on the butt theoretically and say, good game, let's go just have at it. But on the other hand, like you have to teach people the correct way to not go get their asses beat.
yeah, and like I think we were just having this conversation the other day too about hey, there's a value in earning things, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not handed
Mm-hmm.
to you,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's funny. Right after we had that conversation, I just had another conversation with a friend on Facebook about how people think, right? And I see the parallel in my kids where some people ask the why, right? And some people just do, right?
Yes.
And I think you can agree, like anybody that does AD kinesthetic, right? You gotta do first and then ask why later. There's a timing. Sometimes you just gotta bite your tongue and you just gotta because we gotta learn with our bodies first, right? And I think that's where my oldest, when I look at my oldest, he struggles with that because he wants to know why about it. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I'm like,
Oh,
no,
my
hey,
oldest too, man. My oldest too.
right?
It's almost I wish I could take that burden off of her, but I can't.
Yeah. And you can't blame them because they're so curious, right?
Yes.
And so,
And
but
they
like,
want to do right by you and their
yeah,
other
they want to
teachers. They just want to do right.
absolutely.
Especially
Absolutely.
those firstborns, man. Those firstborns, they just want to do everything right.
Well, they're eager to please, right?
Yeah,
Because
very much. Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, and that's the thing. That's a spirit that I don't want to crush. That's going back to
No,
kind
I
of our
agree with
original
that
kind of,
too. It's
and so those are
tough,
the things we
man.
want to foster. Yeah, I know
It's
it is.
tough
And
both
when
as a parent and a teacher.
and understanding the timing as both, right? It's like, when do you push? When do you pull back? When do you know, when do you have to, kind of, like kind of say, hey, hold on, right? It's like,
Yeah. Holy
yeah,
crap, we jumped right into it, Smafcasters. I mean, episode 29, what more can you ask for? We really haven't skipped a beat. Like, we're jumping right into the topic here. And, um,
yeah.
I mean, Kay, the reason, first of all, that I wanted to have you on the show is because I freaking love you. I mean, like,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
you're
You
just one of
ditto,
those
man, ditto.
people that, like, you really understand not just martial arts, but, like, other people. And that's one of those things that comes from a life of trying to understand other people. You can't just do that, you know? Not I would
Yeah,
say there's a very small 5% of the world or less understands people without having to try. The other
yeah,
95% of the world really has to try to understand others. And you're one of those people
yeah.
that has tried and succeeded in understanding others. And I would guess that had you and I ever met in person, we'd probably have a really good time together. But we'd also disagree on a lot of things. And that would be okay between us. And that's one of
Yeah,
those things that's hard to find in the world today. I feel like you really have a fresh perspective on that whole situation. You don't seem to be one of those people that is all that offended by people disagreeing. You just seem to want to find a common ground anyway.
yeah, and I appreciate you, saying that. It's just, I got a couple of things, like, like I've been given the gift of gab, number one, right?
Yeah.
So, I like
Yep.
talking. And I noticed that a lot of things that I do, I'm a connector. So, I like pulling people together, and so that's another kind of a gift that, that I've been able to kind of utilize. In the martial art world, it just kind of, it happened to be, my father's child, and just kind of, it coincidences to us. Oh, hey, my dad was saying, hey, I need you to go talk to so and so sensei, or I need you to help your sensei do this, or
Yep.
I need you to go to Japan. And I'm like, holy cow! It's like now, because my dad's like, well, he's 78, going on 79. And he's kind of like in the background. And, like my sensei here, he's still young. He's still in his mid 60s. My sensei in Japan, he's already in his, he's already like close to 90, right? And so, so they're using the right people, the youth, right? Like, and I can't. It's sad because it's like, I realize I don't fit in the 18 to 35 category for tournaments anymore, right? And it's like, oh man, what am I supposed to do now? So like, I've kind of really kind of having to kind of really get into that advisor, the true kind of sensei kind of
Yes.
like,
Yes.
role, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, when did this happen?
But I feel that
And
from
my,
you, man. Like, if I was in your dojo, I would have zero qualms about coming to you with anything.
I appreciate that. And the thing is, it's like, my black. I feel glad you say that too, because my black belts, like, like the other ones that are in my dojo, they kind of feel the same way. I got older ones. I got ones that are like in their 50s and 60s. I got
Yeah.
younger ones that just got their black belt, and and they feel, I guess, comfortable to do that. So, I think again, it's that connector piece, right? And then being able to work in between the
Yep.
senseis, right?
Yep.
And and being able to hold, like the conversation. There's trust, and there's a lot of different things, and just I guess I'm lucky, in that sense, where I'm able to connect with people, and like you said, common background, common, kind of upbringing, common core values. Those kind of all help.
Yes.
It's like, being able to connect that way.
That's the second time
And
you said
so,
core values in less than 30 minutes. So let's
you know,
tap on that real quick. I mean,
yeah,
everything
it's
you said so far is very, very, very true and very important. But listen, like, as adults, those core values are very important because that's who we've become as adults over 20, 30, 40 years, 50,
yeah,
60 years. I mean, I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to get anything like that. But just a matter of getting up every morning and brushing your teeth before noon. Like, that in and of itself is a core value, right? So, like,
yeah,
for people who are listening to this Maybe from a martial arts lens, maybe not. Maybe just from a nerd lens, who they like Star Wars and they found this podcast because they like Star Wars. That act of just
Yeah,
getting up every morning, brushing your teeth, I mean, that is a black belt scenario, right? Like that's a
yeah,
situation where a black belt wakes up every morning and tells himself, listen, you have this standard to uphold where you have clean teeth, right? Or you have this standard
yeah,
to uphold where you change your clothes into a new outfit every day. And
yeah,
though that sounds like something a black belt shouldn't have to worry about or something that's trivial, um, just speaking as a black belt, that's one of the things I take very seriously day to day is I have 3 kids I watch every day. They're my own kids, but I until 5:30 p.m. every day, they're my responsibility. And up until that point, things like brushing teeth, things like having lunch at the right time, things like having a cup of water with ice in it ready to go, they're just very important things. And that's what makes a black belt, those rudimentary things being practiced every day over and over to the point where you can help others with it, to the point where you feel like you're empowering others with it, in this case my children, but in other cases your students or your friends or your own children. I mean, Kay, am I off base at all, or how do you feel about
no, no,
this?
no. Now, I would say the exact same thing, but I would add this is that, a lot of people think that the black belt is the end goal, right? It's a you arrive at being a black belt and that's it,
Please
right?
go on
But
this.
what a
I'm
lot of
glad you started on this. Please go on this.
but the but the thing is, what you're saying, like, and it's for all of us, especially to understand what being a black belt is. Being a black, once you get your first degree black belt, that's just starting line right there, right? So when we talk about being black belts, we're not talking, especially the ones that understand. It's not that we're saying, hey, we mastered all this. We mastered the basics, right? We mastered learning how to brush our teeth, learning how to make our bed in the morning, right? But we got to get better. That means we got to do it every single day, right? And have that discipline and continue to do so. That's what makes
Yeah.
a black belt,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
means just because we can do a forward a forward strike, right? Now we got to start thinking variation, right? We got to thinking how do we make it better? How do we got to keep moving forward? By the time we get to that starting line, and and most people probably on this podcast, I know, we talk about sabers and everything, but you get to a point where you get mastery. It's not you're the master, right? You're still continuing to train to become that master in the
Ooh.
future. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's deep.
You know,
You get mastery, but you're not necessarily a master. That's deep.
no, yeah, yeah, no, and seriously, because that's one of the hardest things for I think a lot of Westerners have a hard time understanding. You know, in Japan, especially in Okinawa, they think going from zero Q all the way up to first Q, right? It's 10, right? So 10, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Q. We're not talking about done or or black belt yet. We're talking about Q. That you have all that time to master your basics, and that's like learning how to stand, learning how to punch, learning how to kick, learning how to block, learning your basic katas, right? You get that black belt put around your waist. I mean, now you have all the tools to keep going forward, right? That's the same thing with life, right? And that's when I talk about core values, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, right? We start as learning how to be a good people, right? And once we get those skills to be good people and learning how to treat each other with respect, and I think this is what we've kind of been missing in life. I think that's what I think what you're thinking, right? Is that now we got to keep continuing on how to do that, right? And I think if we can do that, I think society can make society better, right?
Yep.
And so, like you said, getting up in the morning, be disciplined enough to go brush your teeth, right? Making your bed, having, getting ready, getting your kids ready, getting, I mean, there's a whole different thing, not only when you're solo and you're single by yourself, but when you're married, right? You got to
Yep.
think about
Yep.
your
Yep.
wife. When you have kids, you got to think about your wife and
Or
your
even just your
kids. You got to,
dog, right? Like if you're single and you have a
yeah,
dog,
if you have a fur baby, right? It's like, yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, but putting that into perspective and doing the things, and people joke about talking about adulting, right?
Yeah.
But it's getting those things into perspective and getting those things ready and doing them on a normal basis and continue to get better every single day. That I think to me that's the spirit of becoming a black belt. It's not
Yeah.
about, oh, I'm a master, I can do this, I mean, yeah, there's some people out there that are really good, that are athletic and do this, but for me, the way that I was raised, and I think you agree, is that the way our fathers raised us is that look, it's not just about the martial arts, but it's all about
No.
how it ties into life.
Very
right?
little about the martial arts specifically.
Yeah,
Very much more, at least for me, I'm sure for
yeah.
you, because I know. Look, my dad was gaijin. Let's just be fair about it.
Mm.
And
Hey, nothing wrong with
I say that in a very proud manner. Um,
that. There you go.
but gaijin in the sense that that dude knew what he was upholding by taking on this burden of training for a black belt and training his sons to be black belts and so forth.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because you're right. Like you determine this sense of being where being normal is not quite enough. You have to just be. I don't want to say better. I want to say like if one person forget, well, you're brushing your teeth. If one person brushes their teeth 6 mornings a week, you remember 7 mornings a week. You know, it's just, it's that one extra step that it's like, listen, I want my kids to feel this way. I want me to feel this way. I want my friends and people I associate with to feel this way. Like we're going to take that quick one extra step to make it that much better. And, and I feel like martial arts, any arts, but martial arts is a great way to give yourself a goal like that, to feel like you're going to put that extra step in, just that one extra step, man. You know, like I've been gardening lately. Last
That's
two,
awesome.
this is my 3rd year gardening. And my dad gardened
Nice.
all when I was growing up. So again, we bring the fathers into this.
Oh,
But it could be mothers, right? Like my
yeah.
grandmother, she was a huge gardener. So it could be mothers very easily. Um,
Yeah.
my dad and my grandmother, opposite ends of the family tree here, both were very into both vegetable and flower gardening. And even
Nice.
to this day, like I'll call my dad and I'll be like, hey, I'm not sure when to start this seed, or hey dad, I'm not sure when to transplant this. And just his level of like just the way he's sort of studied all these things over the years. Not only does he know more about Kenpo and karate than I do, but he knows so much more about gardening than I do, and cooking and things like that. Like it's just these things, and I'll be like, "Hey, Dad, should I put this at 275 degrees or 325 degrees?" And he'll be like, "Listen, 300 degrees, man. That's the goal right there." And it's just those moments where you're like, I don't even really know where I'm going with this. It just feels like you and I have come to this sort of contemporary plateau where we've realized that others have something to offer us and we have something to offer others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, no, no. And I think as you mature, right? I think as you mature, and this is something that I've learned over the years, is that one, you got to learn how to pivot, right? And then
Yeah,
you're not
sure.
always right, right?
Yeah,
Two, you got to learn how to lean on people when when you need to lean on people. And three, right? Keeping an open mind to different perspectives is going to enhance your way of thinking.
yeah,
And it's funny because it's those. If you think about those things, those are actual natural things, right? If you look at the animal kingdom, and you look at, let's say, how birds, raise their chicks, or you look at how foxes hunt, or you look at, right, um,
sure.
they do, it's there in nature, right? It's there in nature. And so, when I actually had to go back and I was kind of reflecting on myself, right? It's like, why am like it was my father raised me to be tough, right? But he also raised me to be, a very, how to say, reflective, and inflective, right? And
Sure.
and then think about certain things, right? But he
Sympathetic,
wasn't he
empathetic,
wasn't
sure.
yeah, but he wasn't one to shove things down my throat, except for my language, my culture and my language. That was only two things, because he knew, being in the United States, that then there wasn't a lot of opportunity, right?
And
But
to a large degree,
because of
my
that,
own father, not the language, but the culture,
yeah.
to a large
Oh,
degree.
culture, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
sympathize with that for sure.
yeah. But because of that, it helped me understand my culture. It helped me understand the martial arts better. It helped me understand,
Yeah.
because when I was a kid, I was like, why do I got to do this? Why am I taking this? Why am I, everything was why, without taking that step, right? Learning, right? Going back to what I was talking about earlier, right? So, um, you know, but you want to hear a funny thing also on top of that?
Sure.
How you talking, this is another in the if people out there, this is not I'm not joking on this one. So, Mark's talking about his father and his the grandmother like or mother working on the gardening. What my father did? My father was a landscaper.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. So he did, he basically, he came in the 60s. He actually came in 1963, and one of the first jobs he took was basically working in the orange orchards in Southern California.
So your
Right.
father was born in Japan, correct?
Yeah, he was born in Japan, right? He was born to a family of people that ran boats. They used to catch lobsters and fish,
That's
and
very
they
funny.
ran
My
great.
father's family was
Yeah,
all fishermen.
yeah, and so that so this is why it's pretty crazy. So when they first came to the United States, the only thing they knew how to do was basically they knew agriculture, they knew
Yep.
citrus,
Yep.
right? And then my father ended up it was a dirty job, but like they paid really well back then. And so
Yep.
he ended up getting his own truck and started mowing people's lawns and Japanese
Wow.
gardens. So and then my grandmother, like my grandmother and my grandpa, they used to grow. I mean, I never had to pay for oranges, lemons, avocados, let's see, persimmons, certain things like when my wife and I got married and like we went to the grocery market and like she tried to buy some oranges. Like, hey, don't buy oranges. I've never had to buy oranges. My wife's
Yeah.
like, what? And so it's like, no, we're just gonna go to my grandmother's. We'll just go get some oranges there and lemons
Wow.
there. Yeah. So like it's just funny how you mentioned
And I'm
that
sure people are
connection to
listening to this going, yeah, me too. And like, how beautiful is that too? Like
uh,
to have those memories,
but
to have those experiences.
yeah, but I think that also lends to like the just a lot of things too where you know growing up like that, it wasn't very easy, right?
Sure.
Like, our parents probably didn't grow up with a lot of things, like yeah, I can tell you my father, he like I got stories, about him walking to school in Japan, bare feet, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
no
Yep.
shoes. But the funny thing is, he used to tell me all the time, I didn't believe him. The whole thing, walking up the mountain and walking
Uphill
up,
both
you know,
ways in the
both ways,
bare feet. Yep.
waist deep in snow, right?
But they were serious.
Yeah,
They weren't really
they were
joking.
serious. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
no, I think
five,
about that all the time.
you know, but they I think that kind of lends to and I think life's gotten a lot easier for a lot of us. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not as tough as my dad. You
No,
know,
not even close.
I mean, mentally, physically, my dad's 70, I guess it's 78. Like now I know I can take him physically, but there's no pride in that for me
Well,
anymore.
that's the
Like
thing. I mean, like, I think
yeah,
week to week, like, I spar with killers every week, but if I had to face my dad in open conflict, I'd be toast.
oh man, I always how they have those video game things, what ifs, like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
the 85 Bears went against like the 90s,
yeah.
Dallas Cowboys, right? It's like, who would win, right? If I went against my dad at 45, 46 and the
My
same
dad
age I
would
am
win
right
every
now,
time.
oh dude, my dad would tear me up.
Yeah, he'd
I
own
it's
me.
I just know,
It's not even a
you
question.
know. But that's the thing. It's like, I think they were made out of a different cloth, right? I mean,
Yeah, at
I
100%.
mean, yeah, so it's just interesting to see how things progress. And like my sensei in Japan, because he's close to 90, when I was growing up, he was just telling me, he said, "Hey, think about what happens in 5 years. Where are you going to be in 5 years? Where are your parents going to be in 5 years? What about 10 years, 20 years? What's going to,
Yeah,
and you got to keep that in perspective. And now with like having kids, now I'm gonna think, man, in 5 years, where are my kids going to be? Where am I going to be?
yeah.
Right? Where's my dad going to be? It's like now you look at different layers of those kind of things, right? And so,
Well,
um,
let me jump off that real quick. I mean, you said
yeah.
your sensei's in his 90s. Like, um, my oldest teacher, he's right now, he's not 80 yet. He's in his mid 70s. And his oldest teacher is in his mid 90s. And
Oh, nice.
he said the same thing. He's a judo. His
Yeah.
sensei was a judo sensei. So that man is named Richard Hugh. He's also from Japan, I believe, originally. He may have been born in the United States, but if he was born here, he's first generation. But he was a judo sensei, Japanese man, and
Yeah.
very, very just an impressive man all around.
I bet
I've
tough
met
as
him.
nails to that guy.
I've met him a number of times, but he said the same thing to my sensei, which was, you know, um, basically my sensei at the age of around 68, 69 years old said, "Hey, sensei, how come you're teaching the white belts how to do throws?" Like when I was coming up, yeah, you couldn't be a white belt and learn a throw. You were basically only doing break falls until you were, a brown belt or so,
Uh,
right?
Ukemi and yeah, you learn Ukemi until you're like
Ukemi until forever,
yeah,
right? No uki,
ever, yeah,
forget that. So
yeah.
he says, look, times are changing. I can't help it. I have to teach what I have to teach, or I make no money.
Yeah, no, there's a truth behind that too, and not just like I mean not just in the in the matter of business, right? But we have a lot of people that are they're the why people now, right? They're like, well, why do we do this? Why do we
Yes,
do that? Right?
yes,
Why? And it's hard because you can't teach the way that you used to. You gotta. It's funny, like my sensei kind of said the same thing. It's like you gotta teach them in pieces. Like you gotta. It's like you gotta. I think I talked about it in another podcast, but you gotta have a bucket on your waist, right?
yeah.
But
We
if you
we
feed
might
them the
have,
whole
yeah,
yeah, but if you feed them the whole bucket, they're never gonna learn.
right.
They're never gonna continue, right? But now, before that's how it was. You would withhold everything in your bucket and just give them, what they needed at the time, so that way, they condition their body. They're ready to accept the basic. They're ready to do. But now you kind of got to give them a little bit to feed them a little bit enough to be able to get to that point and
Or
get
they're gonna
started.
find it somewhere else, and it may not be
Well,
correct.
exactly. Yeah, and like you said, it might not be correct, and that's the big challenge in the United States is that there's so many practitioners, legitimate, illegitimate, and
Well, and with
not
YouTube and
not.
the internet overall, like
Oh
just
yeah,
the whole
dude, with
world is
now.
is a mess.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, here's the thing. It's like coming from, like it's like the how do I say this? I don't want to offend anybody because that's not my goal. My goal is to be inclusive.
Correct.
Because goju-ryu, the style that I take in the United States has a very very kind of a shaky past, right? Like I come directly from it's funny where my sensei sits in the goju-ryu evolution line is actually very unique. But there's a lot of goju practitioners in the East, especially in New York, that brought it back without a lot of experience, but became very big on the East Coast, right? And it's grown into something. It's grown into American, goju, grown into American goju kung fu. It's going into goju, so and I don't want to displace them. It was just a matter of circumstance, right? Not everybody has the ability to continue to practice with directly in the line in Okinawa or in Kagoshima or in Japan, right?
Right.
So and so like my sensei here, he was born in Japan, but came when he was like 2 or 3, and he picked it up, kind of like, like along with my father. They made it a pact to say, hey, look, we don't want to push anybody away. We want to be here again as a connector. If you want to learn, right, and you want to learn updated stuff, hey, feel free. We're not going to judge you. And that's the thing. It's like, there's a lot of stuff here that is, you know, that there's different perspectives, right? And there's different ways, and people
Yep.
taking it to business. They made a business out of it, which is the American dream, right? I mean, you can't blame them for that. And then
Sure.
there are others, yeah, and there are other schools that are traditional and they keep it traditional. And like, I'll be honest, if you ask me how much I charge at my dojo, you would laugh. It's like, how do you stay in business? You know,
It's the
um,
same at the gym where I teach.
yeah, and it's just a matter of it's just a matter of how things work out. And that's the funny thing. That's I think that's the beauty behind I think all the different models we have in the United States. But you're right. I mean, we have the power and the knowledge of the whole world in our palms now, right? Like you said, YouTube. Like I was sharing videos with you the other night saying, hey, like what kata is this? Like if you want to see Gankaku, I can show you different versions of the kata Gankaku. I can show you, I can show you all 6 of the competitive katas
Yep.
that were at the
Yep.
Olympics. You know, and like you can watch them and mimic them, but do you really have a teacher that can really teach them?
Correct.
And that I think I think that's a big thing. And I think that's kind of like where we're at with Sabers, right? I mean, Sabers, there's a lot of
So
videos
glad you
online,
brought this right back around.
right?
You made the perfect
Yeah.
segue here.
So and that's the thing. It's like like I'm glad that that I bumped into you guys. Sifu Allen, right? You got in education. Even Courtney. Cynthia Courtney, right? It's like just like I think I love it because you guys have the right mindset in regards to bringing the education to the table because you can mimic all you want online, right? And say, oh, this is what this guy was doing, I'm gonna do this. But once you start practicing and you practice the moves and you get the physical part down, now you can start asking, this is where the why comes
Yeah.
in. Why do we do it,
Well,
right? And so
Kay, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this before. I mean, this is so great. You've perfectly just transitioned us here. Um, this is kind of the reason I want to talk to you tonight. Like, you mentioned we were exchanging kata the other
oh
night,
yeah.
just videos of kata, and like, you mentioned Alan, Courtney, just the variations on things, but also like, I don't know about you, but when I grew up in the martial arts, I was very seldom taught that something was invaluable. Very often, my teachers, even if it was something they didn't teach me, showed me the value in something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm so passionate about it now, but I never felt like there was a martial art or a concept in martial arts that was outside my purview. I always felt like my teachers were behind me 100%, like other students were behind me 100%, and I could learn something no matter what it was and apply it to my own practice. And
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
sure, yeah, it is awesome, but I feel like that you had that same thing, that Alan had that same thing, that Eric and others had that same thing. And that's the kind of thing that, I mean, if we're teaching sabers of all the martial art styles we could get into, lightsaber is so open ended.
Yeah.
And it really
That's another
takes
reason why.
people who really are passionate and value technique, value education, value
Yeah.
sharing, value experience. And it takes those kind of people to expound it upon what it could be.
Yeah.
Right. And
And, I love what you just said right there. Because it's in its infancy, right?
sure.
And we gotta be open minded.
Yeah.
There has what makes it great, what makes it's funny that looking at just even looking at the styles of what's come out like the Star Wars movies in the different eras,
Yeah.
right? Freaking the the George Lucas had it down. It's like especially for the first the first three trilogy, and then looking at the prequels, right? And then we'll talk about the sequel trilogy afterward. But man, but if you think about like how they presented it, it's great. Like you saw seasoned fighters, right? Mainly Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and they're
Yep.
basically this is after their prime. They're seasoned. They know what they're doing, right? And so you see the movements. That's why they use kendo as a as the model, right? But then you
Simplistic,
go back to
direct, effective.
yeah, and then you go to the prequels and you see what they were capable of in the heyday,
Yes.
right? That's where you see a lot of the wushu influence. You see a lot of the Jean influence. You see a lot of rapier influence, right? It's like you see a
Sure.
lot of differential, so they thought it out in lore and canon. Okay, look, how like this is what it was before, right? And so you know, looking at that, it's like like in looking at how we look at sabers today, like in our art, even if it's just for fun, right? I truly believe, like, and me, it's like we've had jokes about this before, but like I'm a big, 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 you know, um, basics guy, right? And so,
Sure. Shicho for
I
life.
mean, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I still gotta make that T-shirt, by the way, but
I've
yeah.
still got so many good T-shirt opportunities here. We just haven't put them out yet, but y'all
Oh
y'all be
man.
patient.
Yeah, but like just be realistic, right? I mean, when I get a chance to teach, and there's not a lot of people that want to learn it, but when I get a chance to teach, like Saber stuff, right? It's like, I start them with two hands. It's like, look,
Yes.
two handed, right? Go. And then once you feel comfortable, okay, then maybe we'll start looking at flourishing with one hand, right? We'll start
Sure.
looking at striking with another hand. You know,
Yeah.
and then some people want to go, they want to go Jarkai, right? And say, okay, I got people that can teach Jarkai. So it's just so funny how you see, but the thing is people want to rush, right? People want to get to the point. They see what they see, they want to rush them. Like, no, you got to
Yes.
put the time in. And that's why, I think that's why I connect with you guys and I connect with Snap a lot because you guys understand and you guys value, learning and, education and basics and going back to, keyhole, right? Basics, right? Like there's
Yeah.
right now, my Facebook thing is this practice, so practice more, suck less. I want to make that into a t-shirt too. It's like,
That's great. Get good is the
because
other expression we've used before. Like
yeah, that's another one.
it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's nobody else's job to get good but your own, right? Like, and good is relative. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you
And
win every fight. That means you're getting better every time.
yeah.
That
And the thing
means
is that
if you
you
were
can't.
good on Monday, then on Wednesday you're a little better, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just
Or it could be you could be a little worse. This is going to try to make you try to be better on Friday. So
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I mean, dude, this martial arts game is not a ramp. It's a freaking
no,
roller coaster. It goes up and it goes
yeah,
down, and it goes fast and it goes slow. And that's the point. But
yeah.
that's not
And
just
I think
martial arts. If you get good at any
anything,
craft, any
yeah,
skill, you should be in a roller coaster type of environment at least for a little bit, right? Like
yeah,
eventually you're
yeah.
going to climb and you're going to get better and you're going to get great, but at a certain point you need to go through that roller coaster where you're sort of tumultuous in your progression.
It, it's constant, man. I mean,
Yeah.
even in the traditional sense too, it's like, I think what we do is we get caught up in comparing ourselves to everybody else. Oh, he's good. Why can't
Oh,
I do
oh.
that? Right?
You and I talked about this the other night, just how
Yeah,
poisonous that can be to an
yeah.
individual.
And going back to the black belt thing, the black belt, you're not comparing yourself. You compare yourself to yourself. Are you getting better yourself?
Oh, people
Right?
do guilty, by the way, guilty.
Oh
People
no,
do
me
compare
too.
themselves
Me
to
too.
others, especially
Yeah,
during something like black belt training or training for a new rank or whatever the case may be. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, how competitive it can get and how poisonous that is to your progression.
yeah. And the thing is, let me tell you, it's a pitfall that everybody has to go through,
Yes,
right?
I
And
agree with
and and,
that.
and that's the thing. I know, we're talking about it, and it doesn't make sense, but it's like we do that to ourselves, and we got to understand, like, it's like winning is fun, right? And this is a
Sure.
conversation we have with all the what's it called, the TSL guys. Like, yeah, winning is fun, right? Winning, if you win, is good, but how can you truly enjoy and appreciate winning if you don't lose?
Ooh.
Right? If you don't understand that defeat, right? If you don't understand losing and things not being able to go your way, right? Right? And you're training, especially when you're training hard, you're gonna win, you're gonna lose, but is everything based on winning or losing?
Well,
It's like,
here you go. Randy Couture in
oh,
the UFC. I mean, Randy Couture is
yes, sir.
one of the absolute greats. I mean, but I believe it was Josh Barnett he lost to. I believe it was
Yeah,
a knockout. And what did he say back there in the locker room? He could have said anything. What did he say? He said, "If you stay in this sport long enough, it's bound to happen." And what
it's
did he
not
do
if, it's
after
when.
that?
Yeah,
He went on to acquire numerous championships and break records. I mean,
yeah,
the the point stands. Like
yeah,
look, it comes down to learning curves, right? Like
yeah,
you're gonna get your ass whooped once in a while, and you're gonna whoop some ass once in a while, and
yeah,
both are valuable, both are important, and both are required almost for you to get any better at anything.
yeah. And it's funny that you say that too, because you talk to anybody that's been at that top ranks in MMA, even now, like, we are talking about karate combat and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And they'll all tell you there's always somebody bigger, there's always somebody faster, there's always somebody better, right?
always
And that's not something that's in those. The funny thing is, those three, they're not, how do you say, they're not, they're intangible, meaning that they float, right? Meaning that
correct. It could be you
they're not.
today, it could be
Yeah.
him tomorrow or her tomorrow. Yes.
And so, and if you talk further, like, especially if you have the opportunity to kind of, to really talk with some of these guys, it's, they also tell you, look, that's why it's so important to focus on yourself, right? Focus on yourself, one,
Almost a
because,
selfishness.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like, I think I know we're kind of getting deep, but like, if we translated this to directly to sabers right now, it's really hard, right? Because there's a lot of people that are doing, trying to jump into sabers as a, kind of a hobby,
Hobby,
right? It's like,
correct.
oh, yeah, and not really so much of a lifestyle. And I think that's the biggest hard. I think that's the hardest thing, especially for. I mean, I know some of the people that I've worked with in the past. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, this isn't a martial art. We just like to get together, and hit each other with light sticks, which is cool, But
But it is
some
still
people
a
take it
martial
more
art.
seriously, right? Yeah, I mean, it's how do you say it? And I think that's the distinguish. I think I think
It's
once you have a
tough. It's a
lightsaber,
tough.
yeah,
It's
I
tough
think
to
what
navigate.
it
Per,
is, and I think once the industry realizes, and and people kind of realize, hey, this really is a martial art. You
yes.
know, I think people start to understand a little bit more, and and it's
But it's tough. I
yeah,
mean, people we have the right equipment these days, right? We have generally
yeah,
the right tournaments and promotions and such. But like MMA, lightsabers, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Greco-Roman wrestling, whatever the case is, just that
yeah,
competitive nature adds an almost element of what if that is hard to deal with. It's hard to deal with
yeah,
um, depending on what your discipline is, but also depending on what your personality is. Like maybe
yeah,
you're a really great technical martial artist, but you're just not a competitor.
yeah.
What
No,
do you
no,
do,
that's
right? Like that's me. I'll be 100% honest. I'm technically, and I don't mean to be arrogant, but technique is my forte. Being a technician is what I've always been. I've never been a competitor. I've never really cared that much about winning or losing.
yeah,
That being said, I've cared a lot more about like, is my sidekick better than his? Is my reverse punch better than his? Is my jab better than hers? Am I faster than she is or he is? Those are the kinds of things I've always worried about. I've never cared
yeah,
about did I win that match? Did I lose that match?
yeah.
And when I have cared about it more, it's usually been to my detriment. And I usually end up getting in my own head and losing anyway. So, but that's not everybody. Some people really thrive on the competitive nature and the technician aspect is not their thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because some of those people that don't have that background, right? It's like they do well, and I've seen that happen
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
in and especially in the saber world now too. It's like they're so into it, right? And they're just naturally athletic.
And
They
that's what makes
just
Saber
they're
so
able to,
great. You don't have to be a
yeah.
freaking black belt in
It
kendo to
No,
understand the lightsaber.
no, absolutely, and I think that was the biggest misunderstanding I have with a lot of people. It's like, oh, Kay's a black belt, he thinks he knows everything, but I was like, no, you don't understand. It's like, the reason why, like, I joined, you know learning how to hit people with light sticks because it was making my Kendo better,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's a good point. People need to
Because
hear that kind of thing.
yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm a traditionalist, yeah, I'm a sensei, yeah, it's like, but the thing is, it's like, I wasn't forcing that down anybody's throat. I was just
Sure.
saying, look, like, they put me into a leadership position because I had some of the skills that they needed to kind of, help them get organized. But you know, but the thing was, is that because I was a martial artist, and maybe they didn't like the fact that maybe I knew a little bit more than they did, right? I got thrown into a loop of saying, okay, well, he's a little standoffish. It's like, look, there's certain ways to do things, right? And the way that they're going, right? It's funny. That's why I say I hope that some of these groups realize, hey, this is a martial art, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just because some people take it seriously, some people don't, and that's a big deal killer for some people. Say, well, I just got a bunch of people that just get together and play games. They don't want to fight. I'm like, okay. And then you got a bunch of people say, "Well, no, these guys don't play games, right? And they just want to fight each other." I'm like, we just want to hit each other with light sticks. Come on, man.
Yeah.
So I think we're still kind of, muddling through I think the natural expectation of how groups, are, then, how groups are, and it's funny because, I mean, I think you've been asked this too. It's like, well, what martial art is the best one to teach my kid, right?
Oh my gosh.
And
Anything.
right, yeah, and the thing is, it's like that's a hard. Honestly, that's a loaded and it's a hard question to
So
answer
loaded.
sometimes. Yeah, and it's
So
funny
loaded.
because if you really want to get down to the thing, it's like, the same with the lightsaber people right now. It's like, oh, which group should I go with, right? Should I go with TSL? Should I go with Smash? Should I go with, LSL? Should I go with this? Should I go with that? The thing is, you gotta find the one that really works for you, right? I mean, that's really the right answer. The funny thing is, if you want to go deeper than that, right? I mean, it's actually a really hard question to answer because, like in Japan, they have a saying. They say, find the right teacher, right? But what is the right teacher, right? And do you have control over it? You don't, because normally
That's interesting.
because you're limited to geographic location, right?
Sure.
Unless you're going to travel, 5 hours a day to get to a sensei that you want to train with. I mean, that's crazy,
Or you
but I
do
mean,
some sort of online, but to be honest, just coming from a
yeah,
person who's tried to offer the online thing, since 2020 went by, people have very little taste for online education these days.
these days, yeah, they rather be in the front of they rather be in class or
Yeah, they don't want to
No,
be
I agree.
forced into
I
a
agree.
situation to be on Zoom anymore.
Yeah, you
I
know.
can't say I
I
blame
mean,
them.
no, I don't. I don't blame you either. But like I said, you got geographic location,
Yep,
right? You
that's a
got
big deal.
you got financial requirement. Is the sensei cheap? Is he expensive? Right? How much should I be paying? Right? And
Enough for the
then
guy to
you got
get
somebody.
his gas to the place, right? So
Yeah.
that's one of those things I'm dealing with. Yeah, sorry, I hate to keep jumping on you, but like
No, no, no,
you're
no.
just speaking truths, and like for
Yeah.
me, I teach a lot of private lessons. Like it has to be worth it for me to get there, right? Like
Yeah.
if it's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, it needs to be worth it for me to spend the gas money to get there.
Absolutely. Right. And so I mean, you can see how this is going. And you got recommendations from other people. Are they are those recommendations coming from people that are actually in the industry, right? That actually trained with that teacher? It's
Correct.
like you start. It's like, okay, well, how much specialization or how much knowledge
Right.
does this person that's giving the recommendation know that this guy is the best, right? Or this teacher is the best, or this,
Yep.
and so it's like, I mean, looking at it, you really don't have control over, you know, finding. You actually got to be lucky, to find a school that you fit with really, right? And instead of forcing yourself, because it's almost like you're forcing yourself down a, you're a square peg and you're trying to force yourself down a round hole, right?
Yep.
And so, when somebody says, "Oh, it's like, what's the best?" It's like, I say, look, you just try it out, right? If it doesn't work out, right, go try something else out. That doesn't work out, come back. It's like, it's really hard. It's like, and the one, it's like you got to sift, from a teacher's perspective, you got to kind of sift through these students because they're the ones that, some of them, they may be good students, but they, maybe it's not what they needed, so they, you lose students that way. But
Yeah.
then, you got, so this is the challenge of every instructor, I think, is to, because the students choose you, right? And so that's the hardest part. It's like, now once they choose you, are you a good fit?
That's interesting.
People, some people use the religion, things like, oh, you got to find the right religion, right? It's like, I hate using that one, but it's just, honestly, I mean, you could be in Ohio, or you could be in Kansas, you could be in, you're not going to find a, it's going to be really hard to find a sensei that's just down the block of you, right? Like,
Right.
let's say like a Japanese traditional sensei that's, from Japan, right? It's like, you're not going to find the perfect, you're not going to find the perfect fit initially. You're going to have to settle for certain things. And I hate to say that, but
No,
that's the
no, I want to
reality,
get into this. You literally just seconds ago jumped into exactly the topic I wanted to get into tonight, which was sort of what I was texting you about. I think it was yesterday, which is
Oh,
like basically like, man, you said it in so many good ways. So let me try and boil it down. Um, okay. broad strokes. There's many different ways to do many different things in martial arts, right? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
sometimes we learn something and we go, this is the way we do this. And then years later, sometimes, decades later even, we find a variation on that one thing that we've been doing this whole time. And we go, holy crap, there's another way to do it. Well, which one's the right one? Well, maybe they're both right. Maybe neither one's right. Maybe they're both right, though. Maybe there's something you can learn from both. Just the point being, like, okay, I really don't know if there's a point. There's mostly examples. So let me give you another one. Kenpo.
Yeah.
There's a form called book set. This book set is also known as panther, depending on who you talk to.
Okay.
And depending on who you talk to, Kenpo panther might be very similar or very different from Hungar panther, which is
True.
not karate at freaking all, right? So we're okay. So you and I were texting the day. Let me just bring up these texts real quick. Talking about a YouTube channel called Seki Sensei or Ask Seki Sensei. If anybody's never heard of that, please go look at that channel. Please. We're not getting any kickbacks for this. Please just go look at that channel. Ask Seki Sensei.
Yeah.
It's
Actually,
amazing.
let's ask. Yeah. Let's ask Seki
Yeah.
Sensei.
So good.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking about specifically a video on kendo, and it was Seichuto.
Yep. Musoshin Denu, right?
Yes, but what was the name of the other kata that was basically has become Seichuto over time? It was
it's
something Kage?
hold on. I know exactly what you're talking about. Hold on a second. Because Seijuto is actually the name of the kata, right? So
yes, but there were two versions of it, and
there-
one of them was actually from a different style and called something else.
it was let's see.
Something
So
Kage. I
Seijuto
forget.
has so I think you're thinking of the actual because what's the other style? I think it's the other style that does it.
Well, I mean, regardless of the name, the point being,
Yeah.
it's basically the same, but done two very different ways. And
Yes.
what the video you and I were talking about had sort of divulged to us was that it was done.
Oh,
go ahead.
you're talking about Shinkageryu? Yeah, Shinkageryu.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
no, don't apologize at all. Over time, the Seichuto had become slightly varied as a result of the way it was perceived in competition.
Yeah.
But that happens in all martial arts styles and Saber as well. Just the way that people practice, the way that people train, the way that people learn things is influenced by either competition or tradition, I would say.
Yep.
Those are the two main things that influence the way people train. Competition or tradition, right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I feel like the hard thing is finding a balance between the two.
Yeah, or that's a hard part. The finding the balance piece, is like sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, here's the thing: the biggest misconception is that one is right, the other is wrong.
That is it. And even within yourself, you're sort of training and you're going, should I be this or should I be that? And it's not either or. It's like, yes, all of it is okay. That's
wrong.
hard to deal with, though.
Yeah, it is. You got because you got to be able to distinguish what is what, which is what, right? So in this case,
that's the task.
Say, hey,
I agree with that.
This is version 1. This is version 2, right? So But if you understand both, right? If you understand both, or if you understand one and you follow one and you understand, well, this is the other one's not my style, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna look down on it. I'm not gonna, I want to learn more about that one and just kind of hold it off. But this is my style, right? Um, it's not wrong either. That's the thing. It's like I'll be honest. It's like the last few years, I'd say decade or so. I mean, I've been really busy in regards to translating for different senseis in Japan. Having seminars here, and it's really difficult sometimes because the sensei brings in his own style, even though there's a universal style, right? Like what we teach universally, um, you know, in regards to katas, right, or even just basic technique, right? But each style, even within goju-ryu, right, we have different situations. Like Fujiwara sensei that I work with mainly, Fujiwara Sage sensei, he's in Akita-ken in Japan. He's kind of he's like the international, I guess he's the international chair, so he's kind of in charge of kind of making sure that he's passing down his the universal, organizational accepted, or um, curriculum, right? But him himself comes from a very, very very important lineage through Yamaguchi, Goju and his sensei, Tasaki sensei, like, and there's a certain way they do things within their group Seiwakai, right? But then my style, right? My style of Goju, coming through, my sensei in Japan, right? We have a certain specific way we do things. The funny thing is, I have two other different branches of Goju coming into my lineage, right? And then, some of the famous ones, like, TOGKF, the Higaon sensei, right? We got, some of the other, famous Goju senseis, like, uh, what's it called? Uh, Yagi Sensei, right? In
Yep.
Okinawa, you got, there's a bunch. I mean, I can name a bunch, but things, they all have different ways. And so I'm talking, I know I'm making this longer than it should be, but
Eh,
even within this traditional style, there's variation, right? And so
good.
when you
Okay.
got when you got me on this conversation about which tone is is correct, which one's not, right? I mean, it wasn't presented to me that way, but what do you
No,
asked me?
I
What do
was
you
just asking you if you had
yeah
seen sort of both and kind of what your thoughts were. Yeah.
yeah. And and it's funny because Kenjutsu, like we all have two arms, two legs, and a brain. In this case,
Oh my God,
in
I'm so
both
glad you said this.
yeah, but like in this case, they have different ways of thinking. Like if you look at some of the way that they break down, Shinjito in the Kenjutsu world, it's okay. Look, old school. We had to reach for this tech. We had to reach to make this strike, right? Um, we don't have to do that. We can actually make it more efficient by doing this. Like taking a
Sure.
smaller step instead of a bigger step, right?
Well, and in
So it
that
doesn't
video, just to
necessarily,
get real specific, in the video, the
yeah,
reason for the variation between the two versions of the same form, so to speak, were that one looked more powerful. So in competition, it
yeah,
was more desirable because it was impressive looking versus the other
yeah,
one, which just was technical. That's all. So,
yeah.
yeah, no, I look, I mean, you said I'm going too long on this, but I think you're going a
No,
perfect amount of time. I think it's
no.
exactly what we need to talk about because look, I could learn sabers from Joe. Let's just say Joe taught me sabers. But the way
Yeah,
I do sabers is not going to be the same as Joe.
yeah.
And
No,
then when
and see,
Fode teaches Jim sabers, Jim's not going to do sabers the same way as Fode or Joe. It's just not going to
yeah.
be the same.
And I see the beauty behind
They're
that because
beautiful.
there's a lot of
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
because you see a lot of people doing like you do forums online, right? Like you see them do their they do their they say, oh, I'm gonna show you my version of doing Shicho, right? And I'm like, that's cool, right?
Yep.
It's like, but that's the thing. So each individual, like even like some of the guys like TPLA and these guys that were that they're trying to make this to more mainstream, right? They got their own vision and their idea of like, okay, this is what Shicho should be. This is what you know well, this should be. This is what like, and so it's great to see that happening, right? But I think there's a lot of people out there also that think, oh, why is there one universal thing? And I'm like, no, 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 it doesn't work that way.
Correct.
And if you
And
kind
it
of take
didn't
a
work
look,
that way in Star Wars lore if you really read what was
no,
going
yeah,
on. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's because we're all different. Like you said, two arms, two legs, one brain, and in this case, we got a lightsaber.
Yes. This
We all
seems like a very
and
Bruce Lee thing. Didn't he say something about that? We all have two arms, two legs, one brain, but we're not the same.
we're not. We're not.
We
And that's the
can't be
thing.
the
It's
same.
like
How
no,
boring would
that's
you
what
be? if we were
Yeah,
the
and that's
same.
where that's where accepting variation, right? Accepting variation is very
Yes.
important. Because and that's where keeping an open mind and thinking, okay, well, I can't do that because there are certain things. I mean, there's certain things like 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 I'm not very much of a technician, but basics, standard basics, and understanding basic cuts and doing them effective, right? That's more my wheelhouse. That's what Shicho to me is,
Sure.
is for life, right?
Yep.
But but looking at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, well, hey, okay, well, that makes sense. This doesn't make sense. This makes sense. Well, how come I can't turn that into this, right? And that's what helps evolve, right? And I think that's the beauty behind, even in traditional martial arts, like like let's say kendo for example, right? The way you hit men or you hit the head, there's different variations of being able to hit that man,
Yep.
right? Different variations that how do you pressure your opponent, right? And these are things, and I think that's the beauty behind it. If we can get that, if we can get practitioners to understand that in sabers, especially for like let's say like let's say just in dueling, right? That there's you don't have to do it how everybody else do it. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
certain strikes and certain things, they might teach it, and there might be a different flair here, but depending on, you can adapt that to your ability, right? A lot faster than you go through a traditional karate class. Because in traditional karate, you gotta learn how to do, you gotta learn how to do fixed positioning before you can do free positioning, right?
You sure?
So yeah, so there's, I think that's, I think that is the thing. It's like you can learn aspects, especially if you're just looking at the different styles. If you're looking at Shicho, you can actually incorporate a lot of different styles of Shicho, right? As you learn, right?
Well, you and I have talked
As you
about this
pick up those
before.
things.
Oh, Shicho is kendo. No, 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 no. Let's stop right
No,
there. Let's
no,
pump the let's pump the
yeah,
freaking brakes. Like Shicho is lots of different things. It's
yeah,
sure Kendo's a great lens to start looking at it through. Sure, amazing
yeah.
lens. But is it kendo? No, 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 no.
Yeah.
No.
It's also broadsword. It's also
Yeah,
longsword. It's also,
exactly. Oh,
it's
Gemso is
yeah,
Hema longs is Meyer longsword. No, stop right there. Pump the brakes because there's so much
yeah.
more you can do with it, right? Uh,
No,
Ataru
absolutely.
is broadsword. No, it's Chinese broadsword. No, no, no.
No,
Stop right there.
no,
Stop. Because automatically you're starting to put yourself into a box.
yeah.
And
And,
who likes being
I
in a
wish,
box?
no, that's
I
the thing.
hate it.
I wish Daniel Lane was here because he would talk his arm off about. If you ever see him fight, or you see him how, if you ever get a chance to see him how how he does his his flow, right? You'll see him do two-handed, you'll see him go one-handed, you'll see him go, and if you ever see him fight, he'll take and adapt, right? Which is really, which is one of his best things. Shoot, another good one is Alan Block. He's another type. Right now he's focusing on a lot of this Kenjutsu style, right? You know, but there's just there's you see some of these guys that that are up at the top, and you see them fight, and they're great because they take what they learn and adapt. So they whatever basic form or basic striking they learn, right? And then they start adjusting to their opponent, or they start adjusting to how the how do you say the I guess the flock is fighting, right? Like, or how
Well, let's chat
you know
about this real quick. I
yeah,
like this. Let's jump off on this because let's expand it to other martial arts, not just weapon styles, not just saber
yeah,
styles, but let's go MMA. Like, um,
mm,
many of the people, I know you dabble in watching MMA. I know you don't maybe watch every single event every weekend, but like, I know you know what you're looking at. In other words,
yeah,
and it's very much the same thing. Like, you on one hand, you don't want to forget or get bad at the stuff that got you to the dance in the first place. Like, let's say you were a Division II wrestler, right? Like,
yeah,
wrestling is your forte. Don't stop wrestling, right?
yeah,
But also learn how to box. Learn how to throw two or three basic kicks, right? Or let's say you're a
yeah,
kickboxer. Let's just put it in my perspective. Kickboxing is my forte, but that doesn't mean I don't know anything about wrestling. That doesn't mean I don't know anything about how to not get submitted, right? So there's there's just so much. And you don't have to be amazing at all of it, but how enriching is it to just dabble in things?
You know, I think the Chinese had it the best, right? Because they had so many different styles at one point.
So many
Uh,
styles.
before they kind of erased, like a lot of the martial arts, right?
Yeah,
And
if anybody's been varying their styles for generations, it's been the Chinese arts.
yeah, and the one thing I loved about their spirit is that they say, hey, can we play a little? You mind if we play, right?
Sure,
It
sure.
it means that it's like let's basically let's spar, right? It's like
Isn't that the
and
whole
they would
idea of the Monkey King too? Like
yeah.
in lore, the whole
And,
idea of the Monkey King was he was some playful martial artist that really just wanted to
oh
test his
man,
skills against everybody.
yeah, and it's funny because they take the same spirit because Dragon Ball, right? I mean, R.I.P.
Sure,
Akira
sure. There
Toriyama.
you go.
But Goku's that they designed Goku the same way. Son Goku, the name of Son Goku actually is the name is the Chinese name for the Monkey King, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so, yeah, no, that's where they got. That's why he's got. That's why the Saiyan's got tails and everything. It's like he kind of Toriyama actually kind of based him on the Monkey King. So, but that's
Very
why he's so
interesting.
playful.
Very,
Yeah, but
very.
you know
And
how
isn't Dragon Ball a Japanese subject matter?
it's a Japanese, yeah, but it's Japanese, but it's rooted in the Chinese. That's
It's
why Shenlong
so
is the
cool,
Chinese
man.
dragon.
You just made me a
Yeah.
Dragon Ball fan without even realizing it.
but yeah, but the playfulness of Goku is why he's the way he is in the anime because he all he wants to do is get stronger, right? So it doesn't matter who he fights, right? He just wants to fight him because that makes him better, right? And I
That
think that's
is
the spirit.
modern day MMA right there.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember. I mean, I shared this story too. Like when I was in college, I used to fight against a bunch of people that were in the karate club because we're all different styles, right? One guy, the one I never forget is I fought a Filipino martial artist, and I mean, and so he and said, look, I'm not going to use. I'm not going to use sticks against you. I'm not going to use this or that. He says, I'm going to use two dry erase markers, right? And if I didn't have this experience, I didn't know how. Because I used to clown, a lot of people that cross their legs in combat. Because as a,
Me
you
too.
know,
I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, but the thing is because I was always taught you don't cross your legs. But
Very
little did I
few
know that,
moves involve crossed legs.
yeah.
Very, very few.
But the Filipino martial arts they use it a lot because they use a rotation out of the
Sure.
crossing the
Yep.
legs.
The shifting of the
And
hips, the turning of the knees.
yeah,
Sure.
I got schooled, man. It's like I got my punches in, right? I got my kicks in. I made him sure that that hey, I left my mark, right? But let me tell you, I left one mark, and the guy left me like 30 marks. You know, so but without experiencing that, right? I would have been like, what the heck, like again, like I liked fighting against a lot of Taekwondo guys because I knew that like if I closed the distance and didn't give them an opportunity to use their legs, they would have a hard time, right? And so understanding martial arts, right,
You're
and understanding the
training an
different techniques.
aspect based on what you observed.
Exactly. But
Yes.
now here's the problem, right? Olympics, right?
Sure.
Premier League in Europe, right? USKF, AAU, karate sparring is all become even USA karate, right? Everybody spars the same way now, right?
Yep.
And to me, it's a if you go in and take a look at all, if you take a look at WKF, scoring, and you look at a lot of stuff on YouTube, they all fight the same way. They're all looking for that reverse, the reverse hook kick. They're all looking, Kizamizuki, right? Looking at fighting from a distance. It's all fast touch. They score. They're looking at the judge because they
Counter
want to see
reverse
if they're
punch,
scoring enough.
bang out real
Yeah,
quick.
and I'm like, what the heck? It's like you're one, you're not doing yourself a favor because you're losing your awareness, your combat awareness at the time. Number two, you're disrespecting your opponent by looking for point to be scored. Right? You score and you're celebrating. It's like, what are we doing? This is not a budo anymore. This is not a martial art. This is now literally sport. And I'm like,
Yep.
oh, and you don't see stylistic differences anymore. You don't see Shotokan, fighting from a distance. You don't see Goju trying to, trying to
Yeah,
close that
I
distance,
agree.
right?
That's
Like,
one thing that sort of started to turn me off from the tournaments was I started to
mhm.
be able to not distinguish. And maybe that's a good thing in sparring to a degree, but I feel like
I
when
mean,
you're
before,
learning, you need a little bit of distinction between style. If even just to say, okay, I do goju, he does Shotokan, but I can see there's a slight difference. That's
yeah,
valuable to
and
me.
and I think that's why MMA is so good. And like like I'm starting to, karate combat starting to kind of grow on me too. Like I was telling you about Shinzo Machida Sensei, right? And
Sure.
his
Yep.
recent fight. And you see two guys. The other guy was like but he was Bill Wallace's student, right? It's like and I mean they're not young, they're in their 40s, right? But they are talk about technicians, right? I mean they don't
Technicians.
yeah, I mean they don't move around, they don't do spin stuff, but man, they are so accurate. It's like
Well,
they
and they
wait, they
could,
time.
but they don't need
They
to.
could, yeah, because they understand. It's like why? It's like look, I'm here to beat the
Exactly.
other guy.
If that moment
They're looking at
came
it.
where they needed to throw a spin hook kick, sure. But why?
Yeah,
If I could just throw a front kick.
and but that shows respect to the other opponent too. It's like look, I got to be
Sure.
efficient.
Yeah, I
I
agree
got to
with
make
that
sure
too.
and not screw
I
up.
agree with that too.
Yeah,
Yep.
Machida Sensei was telling my friend, he was like, because he actually got a chance to sweep and take him down, and when he went to go punch the head, he missed, and he was so upset about that. He was like, oh man, I missed my target, you know, and so these guys that's the level of thinking they're at. They're like they want to hit everything they go for, right?
No,
Because
I can sympathize. I'm sure you can too. I was sparring the other night,
yeah,
and this one kid I was sparring with, I say kid. I mean, he's probably 8 years younger than me, but he's a kid in my opinion. Uh, and he was sparring with his hands down, just trying to rely on his head movement. I was boxing his head right up,
mm,
just boxing his head right up, and but I missed him a few times, and because I hit him the other times, I was like ticked at myself. I was like, why am I missing him? I should be missing him 0 times. But it's the
yeah.
same thing. It's like, I mean, that's what martial arts is. If you weren't having this up and down, this roller coaster ride, you'd just be winning all the time. That's not martial arts. That's just called winning.
No, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, people used to ask me when I was more active and say, like, well, how come you don't fight more often? It's like, well, it's like, one, I'm too busy, like, getting events ready for other people.
Coaching,
But
sure.
the main thing is, yeah, but the thing is that, I practice to be able to execute things when I need to execute things, right?
Sure. That's
So,
that's important. I
you
agree
know,
with that.
it is because it's like, you're in a, there's a saying in traditional martial arts saying, you get that breath taken away from you. Right? And I know it doesn't make sense, but if you think of it this way, it's like, look, you can take the breath away from your opponent, and then that's your chance to score. But if you miss, right, you blew your chance, right? But if you get the breath taken away from you, it's like, look, the opening was there, right? The timing for you to take that opportunity was there, but you didn't take it, or you missed that window.
That's
You know,
interesting. I've never
uh,
heard that, but I like it.
to me that's the drug for me, right? It's like like when
Ah,
you play golf and you hit that 300-yard drive, right? And that's the reason why a lot of people can't stop, because they get that nice drive, they hit 300 yards, and they're up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing that next day, right? Just to get the same feel, right? To me in
yep.
karate, that's the thing. It's like I wasn't able to take that opportunity, but if I am and I'm ready to do it, right? To me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to be able to execute when I need to execute and take advantage of that, of that opportunity. Opportunities only come, a handful of times, and you've got to be ready to do it. If you're not training to take that opportunity, that's to me,
Well, and
that's my
opportunities
thinking.
don't come, especially in martial arts,
They don't.
unless you're
Yeah,
training. I mean,
yeah,
unless you're looking for them and actively pursuing them. Let me
yeah.
let me just put this in the lens of one of my favorite things to do, which is sorry but not sorry if you're a vegan. I love to bow hunt. That's one of the things I
Oh,
do.
there you go.
I love
There you
venison.
go.
I hunt white-tailed deer with my bow and arrow, and I won't apologize
Wow.
to a single person about it.
That's
But
hard, man. It's harder with a rifle. You do it with a bow and arrow.
oh yeah, I mean it's a
Oh,
martial art
that's
in and of
crazy.
itself, and that's my point.
Yes,
It's
it
like
is.
there's so many ways to do it right, but there's so many more ways to do it wrong. And
Yeah.
finding those ways and having that success, and even just seeing a deer from a tree that you happen to put your equipment in correctly. Like
Yeah.
there's so many ways, like you were saying, there's so many ways to do it right, so many ways to do it wrong, so many ways to do it in between.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that whole pursuit is what makes us come back for more. For me, I love eating venison. I love cooking meals for my family. And I love the aspect of training archery to put that arrow in the exact perfect spot. But
Yeah.
stuff doesn't happen perfectly. I train to put my
Yeah.
reverse punch in the exact perfect spot every day. But the amount of times I actually hit the person in the exact spot I was aiming at is actually about 50% or less. And
Yeah.
I'm real
And that's the
good.
thing, right? It's like
I'm not saying
it's
I'm
like
a
you know
real
you
good martial artist, but I'm real accurate.
know,
Like I just know. I've been
but
doing this for 32 years. I'm freaking
yeah.
accurate. If I want to
And
hit you
that
with the
and
side kick, I'm going to hit you. And if I don't
yeah.
hit you in the exact spot I meant to hit you, I failed.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, so I don't think a lot of people understood when I was trying to explain that to them because that's the reason why like I can care about the win or loss, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I've I've had my opportunities to win. Yeah, it's nice to win, right? But I take way more home when I lose. What my official record in TSL was?
No, I have no clue.
My official record is 0-1, and guess who I lost to?
Ah, another like really good martial artist. I'm guessing.
No, I lost to my buddy who was he was what's it called, Jimmy Sura. He
Oh,
was
Jim
the
Cerulo. I've heard
TSL
of him.
champ.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he was the champ for a while. So like that was the only time I ever got a chance to fight, right? And I look back and say, man, I'm 0-1 and I've only lost to the TSL champ. So it's like I always laugh, right? But the
Yeah.
thing is like to me, it's like, but that's the thing. It's like I laugh at that because it's the joke. Because to me, it's like if I want to go in there, if I'm looking at, I'm gonna arm snipe you all day, right? I mean, that's what I practice. That's what I want to be able to do, right? If I was able to, if I'm able to, deflect and go for your head, that's what I'm going to do, right?
Sure.
I mean, and if that opportunity comes up and I'm not able to execute, that's when I need to practice,
But I also
and I
just feel
think that
like you're exemplifying the type of person that just likes to immerse themselves in it. Like winning or losing is so far down on the totem pole for someone like you or me, where as long as we came out of it like 1% on the positive, we're happy.
Well, I mean, I think you'd agree. I think, I'll be honest. I've had my share of wins. I mean, it's funny, like, we were just talking about it because with some of the traditional masters here in California, like, like one of them just had, I think it just had its 20th anniversary tournament.
Oh yeah.
And I completely forgot about it, but he was joking. He's like, "Hey, Kay, are you gonna send some students?" I'm like, maybe we'll see." He's like, "You got it." It's like, remember you took my first and my second tournament, and I'm not even part of the style. I when I yeah my he's really good. So he's a Wadoryu sensei, Nishimura sensei. He's really
Yeah.
good with one of my senseis, and
Oh,
they're
I've
they're
heard of
they're
him.
really good friends.
You said Nishimura?
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
Nishimura. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, and so he just earned his eighth degree in the Otsuka. Otsuka sensei is the Wadoryu sensei, the main
Holy
sensei
crap.
now.
Holy
And
crap.
so yeah, so he was really kind of happy, because we're all kind of helping each other, out in regards to like kind of helping with staff, and he's got a young group right now. So, but yeah, it's like it was his first tournament. And this is back like in 1994, 1995. And he asked my sensei, "Hey, can you bring some students down?" So he brings a bunch of us down, and I end up taking his first one and his second one, you know, and this is when we're back still competing, and so like, you know, I have good memories, winning those tournaments. I've won, other tournaments, right? And it's like, to me, it's like, I've already had that, that was right when I was I was brown belt going into black belt, so I was going in. I was kind of in between, right? Because my style, they don't let you test for even first degree black belt until you're 17 and a half.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's we were still on a six belt system. That's why.
Okay.
So in order to do that, like, I mean, I was in brown belt forever.
For anybody who's
You know,
not totally positive, most martial arts are somewhere between the 12 to 16 belt system. Would you agree with that these
Yeah,
days?
I mean, yeah. Traditionally, it was what I mean. I think right now, what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu said, he's probably the closest right now. They got
I
like
agree. I think jiu-jitsu,
right.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu does the closest, which would be 5 or 6 belts total.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, you're a blue belt in jits, you're pretty good,
Well,
right?
yeah, white,
It's
blue, purple, brown, black. I mean, it doesn't get
yeah,
any more complicated than that.
no,
Um,
and that's the thing. But if you're blue belt or purple belt, you're pretty good,
but
right? It's like
in other martial
so
arts, the point of subdividing that into maybe 12 or
yeah,
14 or 16 ranks was with literally just to kind of break it up a little bit. Nothing
yeah.
nefarious.
And it's usually because of age, right? And
Yes, I agree with that as
there's a
well.
great yeah, and there's a lot of grade inflation too. So like like you can't really tell where they are in regards to physical development, mental development, you know. And so
Yeah,
like I mean,
and
it broke my heart, but
let's not okay, anybody listening, let's not just play any tricks on each other, okay? A blue belt
yep,
12-year-old in jiu-jitsu is not the same as a 22-year-old blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Let's just be fair about
yeah,
that. It's just not the
yeah,
same.
and I'll have to say the same thing. I mean, a 9, 10 year old black belt, junior black belt,
Yeah,
is not the same in karate either as a
I
17,
earned my
18
black
year old.
belt at 9.5 years old. I will be the first person to tell you I was not the same black belt then as I am now,
And usually, usually they actually make you retest for an adult black belt after
which
that.
is exactly what I had to
So
do.
yeah,
Yep.
so
It's
which is
exactly what I had to do. And I think that's correct. I think you should have to. They might
yeah,
know
and there's nothing.
technically how to do all the basics the same way as an adult would, but let's be fair. No 12-year-olds defending themselves against an adult as the same way as a 25-year-old would.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different aspects too. Regards to mental discipline,
Sure.
mental
Yep.
maturity,
Oh yeah.
physical development.
Oh
So I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot of that
And
feeds
that's
into
not
this.
to
So
dis or to devalue anybody who's earned a junior black belt. Not at all. Not to devalue
yeah,
you
not at
even in
all,
the
not at
least.
all.
That is a
Yeah,
very big accomplishment. And if that's all you've earned, trust me, you've got my respect.
yeah. I mean, the thing is that the fact that that you learn enough basics to get to that point
Oh
as
my
a
gosh, it's
child,
incredible,
right?
to be honest with
It's
you.
it's huge. Now you got to readjust because here's the thing: you got to readjust because your body's going to change, right? You get taller, you get
Yep.
you get more muscular,
So
it.
so let's jump
So
into this,
I
Kate.
know,
We're kind of getting. I mean, I could go for
I
three,
know we've
four,
been
six
talking forever,
hours.
man.
It personally doesn't matter to me, but I feel like, man, I don't know. At
For our
some point,
listeners, man,
we should
yeah,
maybe cap it off. But for now,
absolutely.
let's kind of just migrate this into a topic that you like already spoiled. You and I were talking about, which is the variations. I mean, like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
okay, let's really quickly. Sabers. Obviously, there's variation. If you learn Shicho from San Diego Sabers, it's not going to be the same as if you learned it from Delaware Saber Martial Arts, as if you learned from SoCal Saber Academy, et cetera, right? But
Yep, that's true.
the intentions might be similar, the techniques might be similar, et cetera. Versus if you joined a Goju dojo in the Philadelphia area, it's not going to be the same as if you join a Goju dojo in the Los Angeles area. Yes, you might learn the same kata, but there's going to be variations and there's going to be
Oh yeah,
nuance. And
absolutely.
let's just talk about this for a few minutes. I mean, Kenpo, which is the art I come from, for anybody who's jumping in for the first time, I come from American Kenpo, which is different than Chinese Kenpo, which is different than Hawaiian Kenpo, which is similar but slightly different than Kaji Kenpo, which is blah, blah, blah. So my point being, when I learn short form 3 or when I learn long form 4 or etc., it might be a little different than when y'all did it. You might come from the same background as I did. You might come from a Parker Kenpo school, and your version of long form 3 might be a little different than mine. What does that mean for you, Kay, as a martial? I'm sure you've come into this day in, day out, where you learn Heian Shodan, and one dojo to the next, it's a little different.
So when I was a kid, right, and I didn't know any better, I'd be the first to be, oh, that's wrong, right? I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I didn't,
Oh,
I
that's
didn't, I
common in
didn't
the
know
12
any
and under
better.
category. Oh,
Yeah,
Coach Mark, you
I
didn't teach me an outside block. That's supposed to be an outside block, not an upside block. Well, listen, chick,
yeah,
it's the same
I
block.
had exactly. It's like I didn't know any better when I was a kid, you
Sure,
know.
yeah.
Um, and again, I think this goes back to kind of initially we are talking about, like, asking the why at a certain time, right?
Yeah.
So my sixth dan kata that I had to do is a kata called seisan, right? And
Yep.
seisan is actually one of the oldest katas that is known to
In many different
traditional
styles,
wise.
not just goju. That's in
Yeah.
Shotokan. That's in many
Oh yeah.
different styles.
Wadoryu, that's it. Yeah.
Shitoryu.
And
Yeah.
Shitoryu, right? And seisan is rooted deeply in southern China,
I was going to
right?
say it comes from
Yeah.
originally Southern Chinese roots.
Yep. And mainly Shaolin, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the funny thing. I mean, if you guys have ever, actually, Jesse the nerd, karate nerd, actually jumped into this, and he's like, I was kind of impressed that he actually, he did, because it's like, wow, he's actually looking at the roots, right?
Yep.
Seisan, it's funny. Even if you look at Seisan within Goju-ryu, there's some subtle differences, right?
Well, you said roots.
JK,
I mean, just
yeah,
really quickly to tickle the whole gardening thing that we were into a little while ago, like there's surface roots and then there's tap roots, right? Like you're talking
yeah,
about a whole,
you're getting deep here,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, Seisan's a perfect example of that.
yeah. And it's funny because like, if I would have seen this when I was a kid and they say Seisan, right, and I'd be like, dude, that kata looks nothing like our kata,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
literally. And it's funny because Seisan, it's like you gotta think of it, Seisan, as a how do you say, like a family tree, right? The
Oh,
roots come
okay.
from southern China, right? But depending on who learned it and what they pull from Seisan could be different.
Yeah, the
Matsubara
branches might
Seisan
be
looks
different of that
completely
tree.
different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Goju-ryu Seisan is completely different, right? Freaking Shitoryu Seisan, it looks completely different, right? Another important kata in my style, goju-ryu, is sanching, right? And I think Seafood Alan and I are talking about, sanching, is another. It completely looks different in southern China, right? But a lot of southern Chinese martial arts, right? They share sanching, right?
Yep.
Senzan, right? So it's really crazy, like, to see the different variations at that level, because like, if you look at it, but if you don't know anything, or if you don't know any better, you'd be like, that's not the same kata, right? And
But does it matter?
honestly, if you
At the end of the day,
yeah,
does it matter?
yeah, because the katas were pulled from the original
Yes.
kata in China, in southern China, right? And so you want to start with variation, right? That the practitioner, or who pulled it from its original root, right, and replanted it, and they blossom into different, depending on the stylistics. That's the first hardest thing to kind of stomach, as understanding variation, right? Then, even, let's say, if you look at within the same style, so let's say, if you look at, like, funny, if you look at our season, my karate season, right, is different from Yagi Sensei's season, right? It's different from IOGKF season. It's different from, which is Higaonna sensei. It's different from,
Sure.
it depends on the sensei and how do you say, their understanding of season, understanding of the techniques within, right? Understanding their
Well, if you're
interpretation.
competing, I mean, you've been judging
Oh,
before, but if you're competing, it really falls on the judges to just have that understanding of martial arts, right? Like
yeah.
I can't
And it's
I can't score somebody differently because they did a palm strike versus a reverse punch if the intention is right.
yeah,
You,
and that's the thing. It's like, how do you get, you're not going to get a judge who's going to be a master in all the different styles, right?
exactly, exactly.
Especially, Goju has 12 kata, two of them you can't even compete with,
But that comes
right?
down to sabers too. You're not going to have a
Yeah,
judge who's legitimately a master in all seven. Even if they created all
exactly.
seven forms, they're just not going to. They're just not.
Yeah. And I think Cannon explains that, right? It's like, you see people that lean towards, or more adept towards
Exactly.
certain
Exactly.
styles because of their
Their
body style, their mentality, their
personality, physical
ability.
makeup. Exactly.
Yeah. and so that's the thing. It's like, that's why even within I think, traditional styles, those things are considered, because even my sensei in Japan, right, he's known to be a connector as well. Like, the guys that want to test for the higher, like we're talking 7th and 8th degree ranks, they will go to my sensei and say, "Hey, sensei, like, can you help me?" Right? If he can't help them, meaning that if it's not something that he can pass on to them, what he'll do is, "Hey, look, I see what you need help with. Let me send you to the right sensei."
Yeah.
Right? And so he'll connect them, like, to the right sensei that can help him. Like, that's what he's known for, because
Yeah.
he's actually very technical himself, but there's times where he can't help him physically directly, and which is why
Boy, and
he's
how
a
how much
valuable.
higher level is that to even understand that about yourself?
Oh man, that's the thing. My sensei in Japan has a very unique
What a
thing.
humbling way to be.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why all these senseis respect him, even though he doesn't sit at the top. I mean, he did. He basically was the guy back in the 80s and 90s. He basically was the guy to go to in the Okinawa and in the southern Japanese region. But he's almost 90 now, right? It's like, so you got to let the
Sure.
younger guys come in, and so he's done a really good job of kind of just connecting people. And
Well,
but that's the thing. It's like, but understand. I think that's why the Jedi Masters, right? They would take a
hmm
look at the
thank you.
individual.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and
I
so
was
that
just literally
and
just about to say the word Jedi. Like
yeah,
that's I mean, that was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in episode 1, right? Like Obi-Wan being younger was still saying like we have to stick to tradition, man. And Qui-Gon was like, "But
yeah.
listen, there's this bright green grass on the other side of the fence, man. At least go take a little jaunt in that grass and see what's up." Um,
And the beauty between the banter between, even in episodes 2 and 3, right? The beauty between Obi-Wan and
oh
Anakin.
yes, it comes
It's
up
like,
again. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but I think that's why they were both awesome. They're both awesome saberists, because they pushed each other. They knew what
Yes.
they were good at, what they
Oh,
weren't good at. And so
I mean, how
I
much of
think,
martial arts is physical? 10%? I
what's
mean,
that?
less, right? Like,
Oh,
so much of it is not physical, or the physical
yeah,
aspects are influenced by so much other stuff. So,
yeah,
for me, the variation over time, like I use the term short form three. Anybody who's listening who has ever practiced Kenpo knows that short form three is one of the most prominent as well as the most varied kata in all of American Kenpo. And realistically, it shouldn't be varied at all because the concepts
yeah,
are very universal. The motions are very universal. The just everything is very easy and easy to get your mind wrapped around, but so varied, and you'll never see it done the same. There could be two Kenpo schools 10 miles apart or less, and they're still going to do it differently.
yeah,
And that doesn't mean they're either one of them is doing it wrong. And that's so
yeah,
hard to. Maybe it's not hard. Maybe I'm just the anomaly, but I felt that over time, 32 years of training martial arts, you even longer than me, I felt that that kind of concept is very hard to learn, very hard to train, very hard to deal with, which is variation. I mean, you get
yeah,
into a groove and you start grooving. Why change the groove? But
yeah,
but you're not you're just staying stagnant otherwise. You have to groove differently. I don't know.
yeah. No, 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 no. You're right, because let me give you an example, and I think there might be more Taekwondo practitioners out there. Um, so a lot of people don't know that Gichin Funakoshi, the founder of Shotokan, was teaching in Korea, before the war broke out.
I didn't actually know
In
that. There we go. Learn
Yeah,
something new.
so and the funny thing is, it's like, you take a look at, the Taekwondo Pumse is kata, right?
Yeah.
There are a few,
Very similar to many
they
Shotokan and Goju kata.
exactly. So, like, but if you want to know exacts, right? Basai is actually pasai in Korean, right?
Huh.
Tekki, tekki is actually chugi, right?
I didn't
And
know
so there's
this.
a lot. Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. It's like lot of people say, "Oh no, Taekwondo is its own thing," right? It didn't come from Tang Sudo, Kong Sudo, right? It didn't come, because at the end of the after after Korea was liberated from Japan, Korea wanted something of their own. And it's I'm not saying this out of trying to offend anybody. My
Well,
wife's South Korean, by
you're part
the
Korean,
way,
are
right?
you not?
No, no, my wife's South Korean, but I'm
Okay.
Japanese. I was,
Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
the thing is, but like I have conversations with her, and but it's funny because I teach, I try to teach my kids, Japanese martial arts. My brother-in-law teaches, like he tries to teach Korean martial arts, which is fine. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But the thing is, not even, he didn't even know, when it came to the punse or the kata, right? That some of them are derived directly from Gichi Funakoshi. Now you want to talk about variation, right? There's variation. I think it was hard for I think traditional, the ITF guys, or what's it called, the Tang Sudo, Kong Sudo, the Taekwondo guys to to accept the fact that some of the kata was not all Korean, right?
Well, I hate to break it to
But
those people. I'm sure they know their own world history, but it went through Japan and Okinawa first.
and that's me. I think that's it's great, and it's
Yeah,
but the thing
I
is,
don't think it's a
there,
matter of who's better or worse. I just think it's a matter of
yeah,
like just understanding your chronology is important.
yeah, I mean, you talk about Chuck Norris here, right? Chuck Norris is functional, right?
Yeah,
And so
correct.
so it's like so like he considers it karate too. So it's like, look, even in the Korean language, Tang Soo Kong Soo, means it means it technically is their version for karate.
Well,
And
and
so
aren't the first? I could be wrong about this. Somebody might correct me, but I invite you to
yeah,
correct me. But aren't the first like few Taekwondo, Tang Sudo, Kata, and I know they're not exactly the same, but they share a lot. Aren't the first few Pumse very much Heian Shodan, Heian Nidan, Heian Sandan,
I
etc.?
I think so. I wish I could be 100% sure. I just know that
I invite
Pasai
somebody to
Pasai, same
correct us
thing. Yeah,
or confirm us on
that'd
that
be
one.
that'd be great.
I
Yeah,
would love that.
and the thing is,
Agree.
yeah, because if you take a look at, if you take a look, you can actually look at the Shotokan forms, whatever, right? Is the basic ones. I mean, I know there's videos out there that have all their forms. I think I have like 21 or something. But it's awesome to see, especially Tekki's one that a lot of them learn at kind of at a higher level, right? And
Yep.
so if you compare Tekki and Chugi, I think it'd be interesting to
Well,
see,
let's take this
you
to
know,
Sabers. I mean, somebody who
yeah,
fancies themselves a very classy Shicho fighter, or a very classy. Let's just take the word Shicho out and just call it a basics fighter.
yeah,
Um, versus somebody who considers themselves a more Ataru or a flashier fighter. Versus somebody who considers themselves a counter fighter or a Gemso fighter, right? Like we're really starting to delve into what makes these martial arts so good. Good is a bad word. So
yeah,
incredible.
I
So
know.
so open for interpretation. So ripe. I mean, like,
And if you think about it, the ones that can blend, right, and
oh,
take that take that opportunity
oh
that we
my
were talking about
gosh,
earlier,
you're a true
right, and they
artist.
say, hey, it's like, and like, I say I'm Gen Soul right now, right? But you know what? I have an opportunity to hit this guy using a cheat show technique,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, whatever.
Being able to flip, yeah, being able to flip into it, right? And understanding that variation. It's like, look, I'm not stuck. I'm not limited. And now we're talking Bruce Lee, because now I'm not limited to a certain style. I'm
Yeah.
flowing.
Understanding that about
And
yourself, how incredible is that
yeah,
when you come to that sort of
yeah,
realization? Now, I wouldn't even say I'm at this point with the saber fighting, but with unarmed, with MMA, with unarmed martial arts, at least the kickboxing aspect, I would say I'm at the point where I can flow the kicks into the punches, I can flow the punches into the kicks, I can flow the clinching into the takedowns, etc.
yeah,
But like that has taken me so many years.
yeah,
And when I finally get there, I'm still at a point where I'm searching for more. I'm still clawing for the next opportunity or educational aspect So like,
Yeah.
I just I don't know. I'm hiccuping, but
No, 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 no. You're absolutely right because, and this is, I mean, okay. And I don't want to make a long story short, but um, my senior, right, had to relearn how to punch, right. That
interesting.
something that yeah. And he's like, okay, I've been punching the same way for over 20 years, over 30 years. I have to relearn how to punch. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. And it was something that he didn't feel like once he started understanding his body more, his body mechanics more, right? He's like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it. And it came down to like we do a lot of like so in the Goju system, every beginning technique in a kata is a block. There's no ifs ands or about it,
Very
right?
much
So
the
every
same.
kata that we
Very
start,
much the same in
yeah,
Kempo. Very much the same.
yeah. And I think it's the same for like Shotokan, Shitoryu. I think everybody
I
starts
agree.
out.
Everything I've learned has been block first.
Yeah. And he's like, there's one where we start with a double open block, side, like just a double open middle block, and from there we got to pull in, and you've got to be able to strike. And our hikite, or where our hand placement is actually right below the nipple line, right, which is basically very apparent for goju or nahate. Right, naha is a city in Okinawa, so any styles that came out of naha, our hand placement when we pull it back into a punch position is actually right below the nipple line.
Right
It's
below
not at
the
our waist.
I'm familiar with this myself.
Yeah, Shotokan, Shitoryu, anything that was outside of Naha that was hot, when they pull their hand in, the chamber is actually at their waist, right?
My style of Kempo
Yeah,
very much influenced by Goju, and we
uh
chamber right below the nipple line.
right below the nipple line. So it's funny, like how you can tell, like even talking about that stylistically, right? Variation,
Yep.
and so when he pulled his arm in, he wasn't able to push from his elbow and snap his punch out very effectively, right? And then bring it back into middle, to middle block. And I was like, we've been doing this for how many years, man? What the heck? And he's like, I just realized I can't do it as well as as other people, right? And he's like, I gotta relearn how to punch. I was like, and my sensei, sitting there where he's listening to our conversation, he's kind of shaking our head. He's like, really? What's going on? And it took him a year and a half to get it back. But the thing is, I was really proud of him because he realized that on its own, right? By
Yep.
looking at the mirror, looking at how it felt, right? And then he realized I need to fix it after 30 years, 30 plus years of training, right? And he was able to do it and worked on it consistently. He went back to the roots, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean that I think that kind of dedication and understanding your body, right? I mean it says something, especially once you've mastered the basics and you continuously. I mean this guy, like like I took a little break after college. This guy, he's younger. He's 2 years younger than I, but he passed me up. So he's actually same dojo rank, but he's got a higher national rank than I do,
Well, I
right?
think
And
this is
so
important for anybody listening to understand
yeah.
that there really is no end. First of all, the
No, there
to me
isn't.
the moral is there really is no end. There's really no right way, wrong way, or definite way to do anything. Um,
No, and it's a full circle, and you keep going
yes,
around in that circle to
yes,
make yourself, again, going
almost
back to that.
like
Yeah,
spirals where you make
yeah,
a circle, you loop back around, but you progress at the same time. If that
yep.
makes sense. So
That
sorry
makes
about the
absolute
hiccups,
sense.
but
Yeah,
here's the other, and we're coming real short on time here. So let's just
yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
kind of wrap it up here. But like
Yeah,
with sabers in particular, I feel like if people are teaching you, sorry, that they are the right way or the ultimate way or the only way, that you're really missing out. On the other hand, if you're so open that you can't filter, that's another thing you might want to work on. But
yeah,
it all comes full circle to say like I don't really think anybody has a bad intention in the martial arts. There are some teachers who will try to
yeah.
teach you BS to try to get a dime from you or to try to get followers or so forth. But the overwhelming majority of people that practice martial arts are there to help you. The
Yeah. I speak.
overwhelming majority. And because you might
They're not trying
learn
to keep things secret, or yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
exactly, nobody's got this family technique that they've been holding on to for 200 years. Okay, it's
And if they
false.
do, yeah, if they do, it's a bunch of BS,
It's
man.
BS.
You know,
Nobody's got this
good.
secret dojo that you can only be in if you get invited and blah blah. Like just stop. Just don't even go there. They're wrong.
I mean, the teachers are they're excited for you to learn. Honestly,
That
sometimes most teachers overteach, which is bad.
overwhelmingly, that is what I've
Yeah,
encountered is that people are excited for you to be there. They're just excited. You want to learn, they want to teach you. You want to learn, they want to learn with you. You want to teach, they want to learn from you. That's what I've experienced, and I'm sure that's what you've experienced to a large degree as well. And I've
so
even
okay, guys,
experienced to the degree that the people who maybe don't come in or stay for the right reasons, they end up finding the right reasons.
yeah, that's true. So that's the thing. It's like, find a spot, keep practicing.
If the culture gels with
Um,
you and you gel with
yeah,
the culture, why stop? Get
yeah, I
going.
agree. I agree.
Get
Keep
going.
going.
Earn your black belt,
Yeah,
earn your knighthood, earn your whatever the case may be, blue belt.
yeah,
Look, even if it's a stripe or your teacher just saying, "Hey, great job," earn
yep.
that and uh, send us a message. Uh, let us know what's up. If you want to be on the show, tell us about how you've been impacted in the martial arts. Tell us about how some of these things we talked about tonight or in previous episodes, excuse me, have
Yes,
affected you.
sir. Yeah. We'd
So
love to hear it.
anyway, this has been just
Yes.
incredible. Kay, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
No, man. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
We
It's always
will
an
we
honor,
will
I should say.
definitely get back to you very very soon. So anybody who's listening, please check back. You will hear from Kay sooner than later. And Kay, as you know, we always like to end with a quick bring your own saber.